Captivated the world for decades. Now a group of sleuths
You're about to uncover a chilling mystery that's haunted the world for decades.
claims to have solved the case of the infamous Zodiac Killer.
What if the answers you're searching for are just out of reach,
That he was a man living in Tuolumne County the whole time.
hidden in plain sight? Get ready to dive deep into one of the most notorious cases of all time. Don't miss out on the truth. They say the Zodiac's identity is still a secret. But is it? We dive into the chilling story of the Zodiac Killer, a man whose identity remains an enigma decades after his brutal crimes. We're standing at the scene of his first attack, Lake Herman Road in Vallejo, California, where the silence of the night is broken only by the rustling of the wind. A place that once felt like an adventure now feels far too close to terror, as we sit in the exact spot where two innocent lives were taken. On December 20, 1968, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were parked on Lake Herman Road, their car nothing more than a temporary shelter from the cold night. At 11 p.m., their peaceful evening was shattered as they were shot by a man whose name was unknown, but whose presence would haunt the Bay Area for years to come. Betty Lou was found 30 feet away from the car, her life snuffed out in an instant, while David, still alive, would succumb to his injuries on the way to the hospital. No one knew it at the time, but this was the beginning of a reign of terror. The Zodiac Killer, as he would come to be known, had set his sights on Northern California. And this seemingly random act of violence was just the first of many. In the early hours of July 4, 1969, the Zodiac struck again. This time, he approached a parked car near Blue Rock Springs Park and opened fire on 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Mageau. He shot them both, then casually walked away, only to return moments later to finish the job. The horror of that night was compounded by the fact that both victims were still alive when found, but only Michael Mageau would survive to tell the tale. Mageau, though severely injured, provided a description of the man who shot him, a young, stocky white male with curly brown hair and a large face. Within an hour of the shooting, the Zodiac made a phone call to police, taking credit for the attack and eerily claiming responsibility for the murder on Lake Herman Road. The Zodiac had made his presence known in a way that could not be ignored. But what drove him to this madness? What compelled him to taunt the police so openly? On August 1, 1969, the Zodiac Killer made his mark on history by sending a series of letters to the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. These letters were unlike anything the public had seen before. They were detailed, cryptic, and chilling, signed with a distinctive symbol, a circle with a cross through it. It was a mark that would come to represent death and terror in the minds of millions. The letters contained specific details about the murders, proving that they came from the killer himself. The Zodiac also demanded that his codes be printed in the papers, threatening to kill again if his wishes were ignored. Fear gripped the community as the Zodiac's taunts grew bolder and more calculated. He wasn't just killing, he was playing a game that only he knew the rules to. On August 4, 1969, the Zodiac claimed that his ciphers would reveal his identity. The press, in fear of more bloodshed, complied with his demands and printed the codes. It wasn't until August 8, however, that a couple in Salinas, California cracked one of the Zodiac's ciphers. What they uncovered was even more disturbing than they could have imagined. I like killing because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. The killer reveled in his acts, finding thrill in the pain and terror he caused. The revelation that he believed he would be reborn in paradise, and that those he killed would become his slaves in the afterlife, showed the true madness behind his actions. The Zodiac wasn't just a killer, he was a twisted philosopher, using death as a means to elevate himself. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac's violence reached a new level of audacity. At Lake Berryessa, 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard and 20-year-old Brian Hartnell were enjoying a quiet afternoon by the water when a man approached them. Dressed in an executioner-style hood with the Zodiac symbol on his chest, he tied them up, then stabbed them repeatedly. Cecilia died from her wounds, but Brian survived despite being stabbed 6 times in the back. As if to add a personal signature, the Zodiac left a message on Brian's car, with the dates of the murders and the words "by knife" written beneath the September 27th date. This attack, more brazen than the others, was not just an act of violence. It was a theatrical display, a performance that the Zodiac seemed to relish in. And once again, he left his mark, both on the victims and the world. On October 11, 1969, the Zodiac's killing spree took yet another chilling turn. Paul Stein, a San Francisco cab driver, was shot in the head by a passenger, later identified as the Zodiac. However, in a tragic mistake, the police dispatcher misidentified the suspect as an African-American male, when in fact, the killer was a white man. Officers Don Fuch and Eric Soames, responding to the call, came upon a man matching the Zodiac's description. Yet, because they were looking for an African-American male, they let the man pass by, unaware that they had just crossed paths with one of the most notorious killers in American history. This error was more than just a mistake. It was a missed opportunity to capture a killer. The Zodiac would later taunt the police, describing the interaction in one of his letters, adding another layer of psychological torment to his already twisted game. Despite years of investigation, the Zodiac Killer's identity remains a mystery. Numerous theories have emerged, each offering a different suspect with circumstantial evidence pointing in their direction. One such theory comes from Gary Stewart, who believes his father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac. The similarities between Van Best and the Zodiac's composite sketch are striking. However, there are inconsistencies, like the fact that the handwriting on the marriage certificate associated with Van Best appears to belong to someone else. Despite these contradictions, Stewart remains adamant that the case is part of a larger police cover-up. Another theory, perhaps the most famous, is that Arthur Late Allen, a convicted child molester, was the Zodiac Killer. Allen was known to have a fascination with hunting and violence, and some of his behaviors mirrored those of the Zodiac, such as claiming to be the killer before the Zodiac himself did. However, there were significant holes in the case against Allen. DNA tests, fingerprints, and handwriting analysis all failed to provide a definitive link. Despite this, many still believe that Allen was the Zodiac, whether or not the evidence backs up the theory. A more recent theory has emerged, suggesting that Lawrence Kane, a man with a criminal past and a possible connection to the Zodiac's victims, could be the true killer. Kane's connection to several of the crime scenes and his odd behavior make him a strong contender. Additionally, when shown a lineup, one of the Zodiac's victims, Kathleen Johns, identified Kane as her attacker. Yet, like the others, the evidence remains circumstantial, and there is no direct physical proof linking Kane to the murders. As we reflect on the story of the Zodiac Killer, one thing becomes painfully clear: the case remains unsolved. After decades of investigation, countless theories, and a series of chilling letters, the identity of this twisted killer still eludes us. Was it one man, or was it a copycat? The true answer may never come. And as we sit in the darkness, in the very place where lives were lost, we can only wonder if the Zodiac is still out there, hiding in the shadows, watching, waiting. The mystery remains, and perhaps it always will. What do you think? Did we finally crack the Zodiac's identity, or is the mystery just too deep? Keep your curiosity alive and join us for our next jaw-dropping investigation, Inside the Mind of Ted Bundy. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, because you don't want to miss the truth that's just waiting to be revealed. Stay tuned.